So we have three great people from CNN, and so great honor to have this
trio.
The Avengers.
Oh, the Avengers, okay.
And this is very good timing. We have a very big event in 2 days, and one of the topics that he's sharing today is about impeachment. So I'm very looking forward to sharing their experience and advice. Please welcome.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Shall we begin? Yeah.
I'll sit there.
Sure.
And also, I will have you guys introduce yourself.
Thank you for having us. This is a great honor. We appreciate it. And nobody take notes. Nobody, unless you feel like it. No obligation. You can close your laptop screens unless you find it completely necessary. My name is Mike Valerio. I'm CNN's international correspondent covering the Korean Peninsula. I just started here in Seoul in June, middle of June. And I came from Los Angeles. I came from CNN's Los Angeles Bureau. I was there for 2 years. And, you know, my story, we're going to share our personal stories before we begin. And I've wanted to work for CNN since I was 6 years old. I grew up in Los Angeles and New York. And when I was 6, there was a very high-profile criminal trial in Los Angeles. It was the O.J. Simpson criminal trial. He's a very famous American football player accused of murder in Southern California, where I was living. CNN was on all the time, and people in my neighborhood knew O.J. Simpson, the person who was on trial. And it was a huge deal for the United States in terms of how we treat celebrities, how relations with different ethnic populations in the United States were changing, how we as a society were treating law enforcement. So a whole multitude of things going on. CNN was on all the time, and as a kid, it would be on every day at 6 p.m. through the evening hours, and I thought, you know what, you get to be at the forefront of history as a reporter, at the forefront of societal change, and it's such an important job. And a lot of my friends wanted, other important jobs, doctors, firefighters, stockbrokers, but I thought reporter is also a very important job. So I had that belief for a very long time, and in high school, before university, I moved to New York and was around the United Nations quite often, pretty close to where we lived, and I thought, diplomacy is so important. We had just entered the war in Iraq in the United States, and my family background is Italian, Irish, and French, and the French were huge opponents of the war in Iraq. And I thought, I'm studying French, our family background is French, and I could not believe that there was this schism between France and the United States, and I thought diplomacy, so important. People understanding each other, critically important. And what a great way to marry both journalism and diplomacy by working at CNN. What we do, we tell the story of Korea, to the biggest audience that rivals and is just as big as what the BBC and the Associated Press and the New York Times shares its journalism with. And really what we do is we tell the story of where Korea has come from, where it is now, and where it's going in terms of martial law, in terms of the impeachment case, in terms of the tragedy in Mulan that we're going to talk about with the 737 crash. What was the history of that airport? Why does Mulan have an international airport? What's happening at the scene, and what is the future for that airport? So that's how I got here in a nutshell. But I work with Yoonjung and CAUin. Yoonjung is our boss, essentially. So, sure. How did you get here?
Well, I don't have an as exciting story as Mike does. Hello, my name is Yoonjung. Yoonjung입니다. I work. I'm a producer at CNN Seoul Bureau, and I've been working here since March 2018, so it's been almost 7 years. And prior to joining CNN, I worked at the Washington Post, also Seoul-based, for about 8 years. And before that, since I think some of you may be interested in how you get into international journalism, I was working as a freelancer. So going back, not as back as 6-year-old like Valerio, but way back like 20 years ago. So I started working as a fixer or a runner, that kind of a local producer. What your role is to provide any kind of supporting role for visiting international teams. So I started working with the BBC team, and word of mouth kind of got into other their workers. So for years, I worked with another international media as well, doing lots of different things and various topics and various length of journalism, starting from like short 2 or 3 minute news report to documentaries. So it was really fun and also challenging. It was fun because I got to meet a lot of different journalists from different media outlets rather than working at one organization, even though we have a lot of colleagues. But also, it was very challenging because every project was that you only have one chance, and I was under great pressure. But through those years of experience, I think I learned a lot and had a lot of field experience, and maybe they got me a job at the Washington Post and now working at CNN. So I think as a journalist working for international media in Korea, we're providing like a lens to our international audience and readers, and having different backgrounds is very important for us. I mean, I'm Korean, born and raised in Korea and educated in Korea. Like Valerio, born in the States, and Gawon, born in Seoul, but also raised in different countries. Probably Gawon will say later on. So having different kind of lenses, I think, provide us to have different perspectives and also other values that require for us to become good, delivering good journalism to our audience. So having said that, it's kind of boring, but I'm sure we'll have a chance to tell you some other values that we consider are important as a journalist. I think curiosity got me to the position now. I think this is the value I place very highly, to be a good journalist, curiosity and open-mindedness, that when you're approaching different subjects and projects, and then you need to be open to people you're meeting, whichever side they are on. So I think that, and also some practical skill, I don't know if you're going to ask us later, is tenacity, and also being able to see some subjects like with impartiality, and also having some maybe cultural awareness as working as a Korean, working in Korea for international media, because as a local person, I can also convey different kind of cultural sensitivity to correspondents we're working with and or other colleagues who are coming to Korea. So there are many different things. And also an ability to be able to work in a moving car. It's very important. Because we end up being on laptop hours and hours in darkness, and in moving vehicles we have to work. And I used to get sick at the beginning, but now, but now
great.
we are okay. So anyway, I'm very thrilled to be here and very excited to meet you all. And thank you for having us here.
And then we have CAUin.
Hello, I'm CAUin, 저는 CAUin입니다. I'm also a producer at Seoul Bureau. I started my job here in 2020 during pandemic, so I'm like the relatively new person at the bureau and the youngest. Just going back to my journalism path, it doesn't date back as long as 6-year-old like Valerio's as well. I actually chose journalism when I was applying for college. I thought about what am I interested in and what can I do realistically. because for a long time I wanted to be an architect designer, but sitting down in front of my laptop, I thought about it in depth and I said, actually, I don't see myself as an architecture maybe like 20 years from now on. And then I thought about what do I like other than interior designing and architecture. Sports was what came into my mind immediately. Since I was young, I was really into sports, doing it, watching it, playing it with my brother. So I thought about what can I do within the field of sports. Definitely not an athlete itself, I was too old for it already. But I knew I loved talking, just talking about something that I'm really passionate about. So I said, why don't I go into journalism? So that was a simple reason why I chose to major in journalism. And then when I went to college, I got into student media like all of you people here. And that's when I really got into journalism, get an experience of it, and then I fell in love with the storytelling part. Obviously I love sports, what happens on the court, what happens on the football pitch, I love that. But I wanted to do more than just the scores, the stats, the numbers, who won. I wanted to talk about the stories that happen beyond the pitch. What does each athlete have to tell the world? So while working as a student, while working for the student media, I interviewed a lot of our student athletes at school. And they all had different stories they wanted to tell, different lives that they lived. And I thought that was so interesting because right now you're only seeing this one football player, but they came from this really amazing background or tough background, and they are here standing on the pitch and people are calling their names. And that's when I realized, oh my God, like, if there are 10 people in this one room, there are 10 different stories, or maybe 20 different. And I thought that's the true value of journalism. So I pursued a lot of sports journalism related career, to be honest. Like my internship involved sports journalism. So when I came back to Korea in 2020 after graduating college, and I knocked on the door of Seoul Bureau, during the interview process, I was asked, well, you don't have an experience of something other than sports. But at the same time, they also consider that as a high value that I can bring into the Seoul Bureau because Yoonjung, for example, is an expert in everything, and I can add a little bit of sports side to it. So yeah, that's how I got my job at Seoul Bureau and got into journalism. And as I started working for CNN, I realized it's a big company. It's a worldwide company, and you have to realize how many people watch this, and that really impacts my work. Everything I put out there, everyone's gonna watch it, everyone's gonna read it. They'll watch it on TV. One mistake I make, that could cause a disaster, who knows. That really meant the storytelling I do over here at CNN Seoul Bureau can bring a big impact to South Korea, to the world. And that's how I am still working today. With that, I guess the value in my mind, just realizing and appreciating every day that the work I do over here can make a big impact to our country and to the world. And I think that's the type of passion you need to have as a journalist. The curiosity, as Yoonjung mentioned, is very important as well. And I myself was always curious about different stories that anyone would have. When I'm walking down the street, I would wonder, why is that man holding a coffee? Like, that's the little things that I've been curious about. Just little stories. It's not just the big, important stories, but small things also matter, and that's the voice that we need to pay attention to and tell their stories to the world. So
It's a great challenge.
Yeah,
it's a great challenge, and I think we have fun. We have fun every single day, and we just want to say what we're going to do. We're going to look at a couple videos of us in action, and we want to, before we play those videos, just say we think this is the best job. At the end of every day, in some form or another, we're having so much fun.
Yeah.
Even we might be very tired after we say that, but all of you here, we just want to stress that this is an awesome job. Eventually come work for us. You're on the right path in journalism school. And there's, I mean, my friends in New York who work for the markets, they're fine, but we still have so much. It's very fulfilling and we love every single day. Yeah. Do you think that's fair?
Oh. Culturally sensitive enough?
Yes.
So can we start watching some of these clips? What we're going to do, so we're going to talk about a couple pieces, a couple things that have been in the news.
Two slides.
Starting with martial law. Martial law. We're here in the crowd and there are two. It's like it was just yesterday. Almost. So, when you all become international correspondents, one of the things that we have to do, it's just us. It's just us on the scene, so we have to think about our responsibility. How do we bring people in South Africa? How do we bring people in Croatia? How do we bring people in Argentina to this site of where protests and military vehicles are meeting? Martial law was the biggest story in the world on December 3rd and December 4th. So we have to think, what can we do to bring people to where we are? So what I thought as a correspondent, I see these two military vehicles, which is not what you normally see in the democratic world, and I made a judgment call thinking, is it relatively safe? Relatively safe, sure. It seemed as though the military vehicles were leaving, thank goodness, that the drama of troops entering the National Assembly complex was starting to fade. It seemed as though, okay, troops seem to be leaving, this is good. So I calculated the risk and I said, okay, I had experienced this as a reporter covering January 6th in Washington, D.C. in 2021. I've seen, vehicles on the streets that are military vehicles, near the center of power. Let me get up close and see what I can observe. So I think that's really important when you're an international journalist. You may have your camera person, but you talk to your team. I said, okay, how on you, Jung? I'm gonna go in the crowd, stay with Charlie, I'll be right back. If I don't come back if I don't come back in 2 minutes, start waving. So this is just a 38-second clip of what I thought would be good to share with the world. So let's see if we can.
We're here in the crowd and there are two military vehicles that are trying to get out of here. We're just a few blocks away from the National Assembly. There were some soldiers that were saying their military vehicles are trying to leave the area and get back to their base. Protesters, of course, voicing their huge outrage and dismay at this moment. Local police with shields around us, and we're gonna move a couple steps away. Oh, and look at this one over here. Unbelievable.
So as we were establishing a good, as we were establishing a good place to connect our LiveView backpack. Do any of you use LiveViews in your student work? It's a backpack that gets a live signal wherever you need it to go. So as we were establishing our live signal, which takes a few minutes, I just thought, let me do this selfie cell phone, send it to Atlanta, and it went on TV within 10 minutes. And it was completely appreciated. And
Picked up by a lot of local medias because Mike was showing how international media are responding to martial law. If that makes sense.
And we thought that rather than just, standing here and doing this, that something like this is much more real and conveys the situation much better than. So you should do both. You should do both, and we did. So the next clip that I want to show was a few hours later, and this is us explaining to only to a U.S. audience. This is a United States CNN show about. Yeah, let's pause. Can you pause it for a second? So this is 4 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States. This is a show that's run out of Washington, D.C. And the challenge here is, in under 2 minutes, explain martial law to people in the United States who may not know what martial law is, first of all, and have not followed South Korean politics. So what we do in that instance is I say, Yoon-jung, how are we going to do this? Colin, how are we going to do this? And I mean, that's part of the fun of it. Like, do this in under 2 minutes. It's a very sensitive situation. But what I think, what I was talking about in the beginning, what journalism students and when you're going to eventually work at CNN should realize is that we're just telling a story. It's very overwhelming. You don't have to say everything that's happening. But if you start, this is a theme of our coverage, we start, here's what's happening right now. And then we say, how did we get here? Here's the beginning, here's the middle, and the end is usually, what do we think is going to happen next? So I think what I tried to do here, if my memory serves of the video, is just say, this is the latest, here's what's happening, here's who South Korea's president is in terms that an American audience would understand. He's conservative, former prosecutor, here's what happened with martial law, here's why we somewhat understand why he declared martial law. It was very unclear. This is, again, in the middle of the night, so it was we still were kind of scratching our heads why he declared martial law. Right?
And the whole world was. The whole world was, and then some of the Koreans even, they were waking up in the morning. And this is when we work overnight, all through overnight, and then at the dawn.
And the only reasoning the world, or we were given, was that televised martial law that everyone watched. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm pretty sure that this report leaves us saying, we're wondering if we're going to hear from Yoon Suk-yeol. We're wondering if he's going to address the nation. So let's see how he did this in under 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Let's go right to CNN's Mike Valerio in Seoul. Mike, now that the order's been lifted, what happens?
Well, we're waiting to hear from President Yoon Suk-yeol, a conservative politician known in South Korea for years, a strong prosecutor who takes a hard line against North Korea. We're waiting to see what he says to the country, Jake, why he took us down this road, and what he can say to justify why he instituted martial law for the first time since 1980. Now, to set the scene, the tableau, we're just a couple of yards away from the National Assembly, the heart of government here in Seoul, where most of this saga went down after the president's announcement. Over my right-hand shoulder, we have a banner that says, "Now impeach Yoon Suk-yeol" in Korean. And then after we zoom in and show you that banner, let's come over to my left, and you can see, well before sunrise, Jake, we still have people, grandmas, kids, students, canceling work, canceling school, staying here in freezing temperatures, not going anywhere until President Yoon steps down. Bringing it back to America, Jake, as you mentioned, crucial for stability here in this country, where we have 28,500 service members. It grows well over that number if you include the military families and civilian personnel at Camp Humphreys, about 60 miles away, a 1-hour drive from North Korea, the United States' biggest military base overseas. This all happened, President Yoon saying that he was trying to fight North Korean and anti-state forces inside South Korea, but be it a grandma or member of the political class or reporters here, when we all watched that speech, we kind of said in a collective moment, Jake, what does he mean? Very few shreds of evidence given to why he declared martial law. It seems as though most of the military presence that lined the street has vanished. When we first got here, there were 2 green Humvees that were parked right in front of the National Assembly building. They've moved out. A whole cadre of police officers have also moved out. So now it's the question, how long is this guy going to stay in office? Will this president be impeached, a key U.S. ally? And where does this key democracy in Asia go from here, Jake?
All right.
A little out of order with the beginning, middle, end, a little bit. but it was a strictly U.S. show. So what we did, we tried to connect it to America. You
By
know,
mentioning the U.S. forces, of course, where there's martial law and 28,000 military forces dispatched, and then what is going to impact those people, because a lot of Americans will care. I mean, it's the same for Koreans too, when some other incidences happen, and the direct connection is like, what are the, damages, and for America impacts for South Koreans.
yeah. Do you have any recollections of what it was like in that moment that you want to share?
Remember, it was freezing cold. If you're wondering, like, producers, our job, you might be kind of thinking about Korean term PD, which is kind of different from our producing job. So as producers, we try to organize where we can do the live shots. We talk to the show producers as Mike is getting ready to come up live, preparing his lines. We work behind the camera with Charlie, with our cameraman. Talk with the shows, can Mike be up live the next minute? Is that doable for breaking news? And then we make sure, is this okay to, is this location okay for us to do lives? Is it too dangerous? Where Mike was standing, was it dangerous? We thought it was okay, although we're trying to stick together. And then, we basically continuously communicate with the desk people we have in Hong Kong, in London, in Atlanta, because we also have to tell the desk people what this is, so that when we push out alerts, when the show producers put banners, we don't make mistakes. So as producers, just wanted to describe a little bit of our job, because sometimes when I tell my Korean friends I'm a producer, they're like, oh, like, do you make shows? I'm like, no, that's not my job. Just wanted to touch that, just behind the camera work.
Yeah, at the same time, I think we're having a live blog, which I think a lot of local Korean media are having too. For a big breaking news, live blog is something that we're just reporting short and more close to the real-time news. So it was very important for us to monitor the local media as well, and also read the declaration, martial law declaration by Yoon Suk-yeol, and then give the key points. What's very important here is you have to go through the statement or declaration and find out the key parts very quickly, and then send it over to Mike Lario so he can do the reporting, and also to the desk and our digital people as well, so we can support both text and video side. So that's what happened.
And I think if anybody has any questions, we can take them. I just want to say, before we take any questions, don't feel obligated to ask any, but I think it's very important, especially in our industry, when anybody can turn to their phones, go on their computer, sitting in their home office, then it's so important for us to be conversational. So I try to be talking to a friend. In the live report, I may not say, and who knows how long Korea's sitting President Yoon Suk-yeol is going to be in power. Maybe I'll say that, but at the very end, I said in the moment, who knows how long this guy is going to be in office. That's, just maintaining like a conversational, friendly rhythm, because that's how you explain a story. CNN does not want people to be news robots. They don't want they want people to tell what's going on in terms that are like you're explaining it to a really dear friend. So I think that we do that pretty well. But does anybody have any questions before we keep moving on? Yeah. Any questions? No? Okay. One other note. So the impeachment decision is obviously coming up on Friday. So this was chapter 1. And as we breach the conclusion, one of the things about working for CNN International is explaining to a global audience both sides, and especially the Stop the Steal signs. When we have colleagues in the United States, they always say, why is there Stop the Steal in Korea? What is going on here? So part of our job, being truly ambassadors, being diplomats as journalists working for an international news organization, is being quite empathetic and explaining to Americans, to the rest of our global audience, this is a conservative base of support that thinks, blah, 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 X, Y, Z, in terms that's very easy for Americans and a global audience to understand. And sometimes we say, to make it in the easiest conversational terms, this is a group of people that thinks that the elected president is being stolen from them based on blah, blah, based on this and that, based on an election that happened in April that they think was stolen from them. This is what they present, but that, body of, but what they're presenting has never been adjudicated by any kind of, independent court or, fact-finding commission. So it's important for us to lay out where everybody's coming from. Never make a judgment, but just in the name of diplomacy, explaining for somebody just tuning in, just going on CNN.com and looking at this story for maybe the first time ever. Like, why is somebody supporting Yoon Suk-yeol? Why are all of these people on the streets wanting him to be gone immediately? So I am glad that CNN, during our live shots, a lot of the time does have a deep interest in us explaining where is everybody coming from. And if they don't, if they sometimes give us a short amount of time on TV, like 2 minutes, we can go on CNN.com and have unlimited space. And we work together with our partners in Hong Kong, in Atlanta, and New York, to do some good reporting on where everybody is coming from. So I think that that's, if you all are reporting on impeachment in one way or another, and the after effects is to truly be empathetic and to realize that, especially if your reporting is going online, it's just to take pains to explain where everybody is coming from, because people from New York may find your articles online. And any thoughts on where we're going in terms of Friday?
It's very important that we stay balanced, making sure that we talk to both sides, not just in politics, but in any stories. Although one may seem like an apparent victim, you still have to try to talk to the other side, listen to their stories. If they're not reachable, then you do your due diligence to reaching out to them to try to hear their stories. There's always two or multiple sides to one story. So I think it's very important when you do journalism that you stay balanced, neutralized, making sure that you take yourself out of the story, your thoughts out of the story.
Yeah. Any thoughts before we move on to Muan?
I think we can move on.
We're going to move on to Muan, and we have I believe it's a 6.5 minute clip. And this is one of our longer live shots. It was the day after the bird strike and the 737 crashed. And what we want to show you is an example of bringing the viewer, this is a TV story, but we did the same for TikTok and Instagram and YouTube as well. But what we tried to do here, we were given access so close to the debris field, like just a few meters away from the tail section. It stopped me in my tracks. It was truly unbelievable to see. So what I tried to do, they said, okay, you have 6 minutes, long time. So we tried to show viewers, this is how astonishing the site is. Here is a summary of what we've seen. So we tossed to, we call it a package, not sure if everybody calls it that, but just a pre-recorded story when we were inside the arrivals terminal where all the families were waiting for news of DNA identification. So we had to be completely, aware of our sensitivities and, to realize that this is the worst day of everybody's life here, and to be respectful, but at the same time, we need to convey that this is an unsolved crash of a plane that is flown everywhere, and the agony that people are going through here, we need to have, that this crash matters because we need to figure out what went wrong here, so we need to respect the loss that people have endured and figure out what happened. And then I think our anchor in New York, Julia, had some questions, and we showed her more of the debris site. So let's see if we can play.
And Mike, we can see behind you, you're actually at the crash site. For anyone that's seen images of this earlier today or the videos, it's pretty horrific.
Julia, I think that could be the understatement of our New Year's Eve morning. It is stunning to be this close. We're only a few footsteps away, so we're going to zoom in before we toss to our piece on all that has unfolded. So you see the vertical stabilizer, the tail, it's jutting out towards us, and the fins of the tail are standing about 15 meters tall, this dark black silhouette hulking above the wreckage site. So Julia, as investigators from the United States, from the NTSB, are due to arrive here and begin their work today, they're going to be looking to see whether this was a chain reaction. But first and foremost, we want to show you the human faces of this tragedy who are still camped out at the airport. It is the unmistakable outcry of grief heard throughout South Korea's Muan International Airport. Families unable to absorb the anguish of the Jeju air catastrophe. Hundreds of relatives huddling in the departure hall, waiting for news of whether their loved one's remains are found. A friend of a couple killed in the crash said he came here to confirm for himself his friends of 30 years are simply gone. I have nothing to say, but it's tragic, he told us. I watched the news all day, and for now, they say bird strike could be the cause. I'm so shocked and hurt, I cannot even put it into words. Now, so many people have chosen to stay. They're not going anywhere, and that's seen, evidenced by all of these tents that go from here pretty much to the end of the terminal. They go back 3 tents to the edge of the check-in counters. You see food deliveries throughout the day. Let's keep going this way. And the echoes of grief. The scenes inside are just a short drive from the cataclysmic crash site. The tail of the doomed airliner still jutting above the field, a mountain in the middle of the debris. More than 1,000 people now mobilized to sift through pieces of the plane. The crash scene is absolutely harrowing. Just a few steps away, you can see where the doomed Jeju Air jetliner careened through the embankment and burst into flames. And more than a day later, you can still see forensics teams in their white suits combing through the debris along with members of the police force as well as members of the South Korean military. Now, to my right, you can see soldiers looking through the fields and around them to give you an idea of the force of this crash. A full football field away from where we're standing, you can see mangled, twisted chairs thrown from the jetliner. A representative of the victims' families urging an even larger response.
What I want to request from the government is to increase the manpower so that the recovery can be carried out more swiftly. I hope my siblings, my family, can be recovered and returned to us, even if only 80% intact.
For now, Muan remains the epicenter of a nation in mourning, the weight of unspoken farewells and quiet desperation made unbearable by an absence of answers. So, Julia, as we walk over here, we're going to show you a better sense of the debris field and talk about why this investigation matters to a wider global audience. Just look over here. You can see all the yellow and some red flags that are marking pieces of debris. So investigators, Julia, are trying to figure out whether or not this was a catastrophe unique to this specific aircraft and perhaps specific circumstances of the day, or the second option, was this some sort of chain reaction, perhaps caused by a bird strike that needs to be addressed, that could, I stress could, affect the wider fleet of 737-800s. That is setting the table of what investigators are going to begin to look at today when they join forces from the United States and South Korea. Again, on New Year's Eve, the sun coming up, a day that normally would be filled with celebration. I can't describe enough, Julia, how such a pall has fallen over South Korea, a country that has been through so much this month, Julia.
Yeah, just a day filled with heartbreak, to your point, Mike. I mean, we were just watching the comments in your report of that representative for the family members saying, and you could see the grief on his face, that they simply wanted a more dramatic and higher scaled response. I mean, for them, waiting for the results of this investigation is going to be unbearable. But do you get a sense that there's going to be, even just behind you, and I know it's early morning, it's only just past 8 a.m. there, but that there will be a greater response in terms of people even pouring over this crash site to try and understand what happened?
It seems as though there are a whole multitude of resources, but our main question is, Julia, this airport is scheduled to at least remain closed until Wednesday. We're wondering if there's going to be more manpower devoted to moving this crane, having the crane move pieces of the wreckage site. But it remains to be, I mean, there are members of the military who are here in large numbers. So we are going to be asking that question to, you know, politicians throughout the country, throughout South Jala province here, whether or not they can contribute more, because frankly, to your point, the people who are camped out in the airport 3 kilometers away, there are still human remains that are scattered within the field, and they want them found ASAP because this tragedy is just too much to bear.
Yeah, and we could hear their cries from those tents, Mike. It's good to have you there, telling the story and report.
That was a pretty tense.
Yeah, it was pretty tense,
Yeah.
and I remember just the same as the martial law declaration. You need to make a judgment, quick judgment. Okay, do we go there now or later, and how should we more effectively report? And for martial law's case, sorry for going back, we need to come up live as quickly as possible. So we decided to do the live reporting from our bureau, which is located in Guangzhou, and then decided to move to Yeouido. And for this aircraft crash, when it happened, I mean, of course, it was really shocking. We watched it on local media, and then we had a consultation within the team with our Hong Kong Asia HQ, how and when to deploy people. We decided to go there because it's such a big tragedy for South Korea as well, but also it resonates with our international audience. A lot of CNN audiences travel a lot, and then so there is a very high interest for aviation crashes. We bring up a lot of different experts, and then we cover a lot of airplane crashes. So we dispatched the team. I remember us going down there, and then while you're on the road and you have to plan ahead everything, and try to find the contact information of the people, of where to locate, and also who to call for local government or authorities, and also find out the casualties and what is going on while you're on the move. So I remember making calls and trying to read a lot of local media as well. And when we arrived at the airport, we've never been to the airport before, so navigating the area and then checking out the sites before we actually have a live hit time, it was really crucial. And I think, yeah, we tried as much as possible, and also talking to the bereaved families is very sensitive matter, and we didn't really try to focus on trying people or try to, like, we talked to more people that were not on camera. I talked to some people just off camera, just try to get their sense and try to get their stories and ideas. But when we asked if they were okay to be reported without their names or faces, and a lot of them said didn't want to be reported at all, and we didn't report anything about anybody, but we only reported the friend of a victim who was willing to go on camera with his name on. So that's how we filmed and edited this piece called A Package. It's like a 뉴스복지 for local media, and Mike reported it.
There's a lot. There's a lot to juggle. Do you have any thoughts on what we all went through?
I mean, I've not joined this trip. It was Yoonjang, Mike, and Charlie, our shooter, that went to Yuan. I worked from our bureau because there were so many editorial lines falling out every day, every second, so many briefings to watch, and the casualty number was going up every hour. So I remained at the bureau, worked on the editorial lines, making sure that we don't miss any of the press briefings. If Hong Kong front desk is writing an article, because Yoon-jung is producing out on the field, she can't be looking at her phone all the time, so I'd be handling double checking our rights, making sure they're accurate, and we put in some authority quotes. And just as we're on the topic of a tragedy, as someone who, this is my first proper job in journalism, and I think it's really important that you kind of, get ready to be on site that you may not expect in your daily lives. My very first coverage of any kind of tragedy was the Itaewon crowd crush. I ended up going there when the bodies were still lying on the street. And even to this day, I kind of get like flashbacks of it sometimes, and it is kind of tough. So I just got there thinking about, okay, we need to report on this breaking news. And I didn't really think about it, didn't hit me until like weeks after. And then I was just sitting in an empty office, and then it suddenly hit me, everything that I witnessed. The cries of the bereaved families, the empty street with shoes without, its owners, and it just hits you. So I think, as you guys are pursuing journalism, it can be any field. It doesn't have to be just politics or social. You can be reporting on sports, but you also come across some tragedies. So I think the only advice that I would really like to give young journalists would be, make sure you're prepared to see anything, and you have to look after yourself as well. It's really important. Your mental health. Prepare yourself in whatever you might see when you go out on the field. Even those debris, looking at those debris, that can, stay in your head and hit you sometime. So I think it's really important that you prepare yourself mentally, physically as well. And yourself, prioritize yourself before anything, I think.
It's hard to do, hard to prepare,
Yeah.
I don't know how I prepare.
Because you never know what you're going to see.
Yeah.
But at least knowing a little bit, at least a little bit.
Just get in the zone.
Yeah,
Try to get in the zone, right?
Breathe,
Right.
yeah.
Easier said than done, though.
Yeah.
Can you prepare?
It usually comes to you like weeks after.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're so busy and you're working like 18 hours a day.
Sleepless.
Sleepless. So your mind doesn't really work when you're doing those hours.
I still think it's be the best way to say this, but we see a lot of terrible things, but it helps us become more empathetic people, and just to understand the tragedies that people have been through. It's terrible, but there are also
But it's also important that we go there.
Yeah.
Like those families, and what they wanted was revealing the truth, and we also try not to jump into conclusions, because that's something that we should not be doing it.
Yeah. Don't let this dissuade you, though. I mean, everybody's human. Everybody has these terrible stories.
Most of the times it's good.
Yes. So what a great segue of the good times. We want to show our final video, which is about Kim Yoo-ji, who we got to
Interview in.
Well, Mike got to learn how to shoot.
Well, we wanted to learn how to shoot with Olympic medalist Kim Yoo-ji, but unlike in the United States, when you have a lot more liberal gun laws, you can't just pick up a gun in South Korea and learn how to shoot. So we observed her technique, and this was after Elon Musk said that she has main character energy, and the world was like, she's amazing. So we went down to her home shooting range, and she was so nice. And our mission was, what did they tell us? Our mission was just to capture her beyond that. And she turned out to be so goofy. So what we wanted to do was to show her goofiness.
Her sassiness at the
Her
same time.
sassiness, yeah. Because she comes off as a robot at the Olympics when she has her gun. So I think we did a pretty good job. Yeah, yeah.
It was for a section style, so we did ask about her fashion and her flush as well.
Right, right. So this is the last video we're going to show, and then we can shoot the breeze with questions or whatever you all want to do. And yeah.
28. CNN's Mike Valerio has been to see her at home.
It is an astounding moment to come face to face with Kim Ye-ji, concentration in full force as she shows us how to shoot like an Olympian.
Slowly, very, very slowly.
괜찮아요?
Yeah.
네네네.
Kim is teaching us here, a 4-hour drive south of Seoul, at her home shooting range, nestled between the sweeping mountains of Imchu. Olympic glory is our first topic of conversation.
Yeji, what do you feel were the most memorable moments from Paris?
10m.
I think the 10-meter finals, when it was just me and Oh Ye-jin, that's the most memorable moment. We were the 2 last ones remaining, competing in the finals, and we won the gold and silver. I think seeing 2 Korean flags at the highest place is the most memorable and meaningful moment from the Olympics.
Handmade? Yeah. Wow.
What makes Kim even cooler, beyond her next level focus, is how down to earth she is, even goofy. Casually forgetting where she put her silver medal from the 2024 Olympics, and later finding it in her backpack. Kim's sights, though, are already set on Los Angeles, the 2028 Olympic Games.
I think I need to start preparing now. I plan to start preparing step by step for the World Cup final coming up soon, the World Championship next year, then Asian Games after that, and then the Olympics.
Outside the shooting range, banners of Kim are everywhere. She just landed a cameo in an action movie and appears in photo shoots for Louis Vuitton and Givenchy. But Kim doesn't consider herself a fashion icon, meeting us in basic sweats with her elephant plushy towel.
10m.
She does consider herself, though, a boon for her sport across Korea.
Tell me what you're hoping to accomplish because of your success.
한국에서는 사격이
Shooting hasn't been a popular sport in Korea, so I hope to popularize shooting as much as I can.
Still, fresh in her mind each practice, the moment of pure joy when her family learned she was taking home the silver medal.
동생들 그리고
First of all, my mom, dad, and cousin were super happy. And my daughter said,
엄마
"Mommy, you won a silver."
다음에는
And added, "Win a gold next time."
What did you say to your daughter?
기다려.
Just wait, Mommy will win the gold medal.
Mike Valerio, CNN, Imchu, South Korea.
That was so fun, and we have the benefit. I mean, everybody around the world loves South Korea and loves South Korean culture. So this was a story that was in demand. BTS story is always in demand. New Jeans/NJZ. So there's just this admiration for South Korea that we're really lucky that we get to be able to capture. And any thoughts on?
Yeah, I think we talked enough and...
Yeah, I have no idea. We should just... Does anybody have any questions or we can give advice for what it's worth, or we can just be done, whatever, we're here if anybody has any questions. But that's essentially what we do in a nutshell. Political.
Since we're told all of you are journalists, right? For Chungang Press?
Yes, these are all media people, some in TV, some in print journalism, or magazine.
But if anybody has questions later, just email us. I mean, it's our first name, last name at CNN.com. We're more than willing to help out, but yeah. Thank you for having us. Oh, one question. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
홍보를 해주세요.
Go ahead.
저는 학교에 신문사에 근무하고 있는 서른호라고 하고요. 아무래도 저도 이제 1년 넘게 기자 생활하면서 굉장히 많은 실수를 하게 됐었는데 기자님들이 생활하시면서 또 이런저런 실수 같은 것들 겪으실 것 같은데 뭔가 큰 실수가 있고 그런 부분을 좀 어떻게 극복하셨는지 그런 부분 진짜 좀
Mistakes.
Biggest mistake.
I mean, then in theory, if you make a mistake, you have to acknowledge and try to correct as quickly as possible, and you reissue a correction. That's what we do.
Yeah, I would say, I think that's a great question. I would say just a few years after I was a university student, there was one story I wish that I spent more time on. And I think you can sometimes you have the luxury of asking more questions to City Hall, to government officials, and I think that I didn't ask enough questions, and I wish that I had spent a week on the story rather than saying, oh, I can be done this story in 2 days. And I think at CNN, our editors appreciate that. When you say, let's wait because we're CNN and the impact of what we put out matters, our editors will always say, okay, we'll give you more time. And sometimes they might say, just go on TV and say what you know, but I think that a lot of journalism students, certainly people in the industry, if you rush a story, that can lead to terrible consequences. Thankfully, one story where I, in a perfect world, would have liked to talk to more government officials. I think that I published a story one day and then kept developing it. But I wish I spent more time on the initial story, spent a week. So I think that people in our industry are forgiving, but yeah, spending time I think is really valuable.
Yeah, and also I think since we're reporting from Korea, we are doing a lot of reporting about North Korea. That's a huge area where you could fall into making mistakes or false reporting. So what we do is we try to stay away from unreliable sources, or we try not to pick up other media unless we can double check or cross check with other, for example, reliable sources we have, defectors or government officials or government agencies. So I guess the same as what Mike says, if you don't fall for, I have to be the first one to report this.
Yeah.
Then you can kind of spend more time in making sure the accuracy as well as the speed can be reflected on your story. But it's a lot more difficult saying that in the real world of journalism, as you probably know that too. But once you make a mistake, I think the simplest way and the straightforward way is to just admit, okay, there's a mistake and we need to correct it, and we have a process of doing it for text stories, which is call the editors and get an approval, and then we issue correction. For video stories, we take it out of the website and then re-edit it, and then making sure that we're reflecting the truth, and then repost it.
And I think mistakes, sorry, did you want to say anything? I don't mean to talk over you.
Oh no, just like what Mike said earlier, people in this industry, they do move on fast. So when you make mistakes, do admit it, like you and Jen said, admit it, say you're sorry. If it was clearly your mistake, just say, it was my mistake, my bad, can we fix this? Fix it as soon as possible before it spreads further in the internet space. And then people will forget about it the next day, unless it's like a disastrous mistake.
But here's what's good about our industry. I think that mistakes can be made very early on when you don't have a lot of resources. Like the example I was describing was for my first journalism job. So it's like not many people are working with you. You're all new. You're just out of journalism school. But at CNN, your stories go through how many editors? Multiple editors, multiple fact checkers. So you have, after you make a lot of mistakes, when you just graduate from university, they make you better. And then when you get to this level, you learn from those mistakes. You say like, okay, I should spend X number of days on this story. And you have people who are your friends, who love the business, who are more talented than you are, making sure that you succeed. And that's really encouraging as well. So don't be freaked out like, oh, what if I make a mistake? There's more support as you go along for people who will have your back. And yeah, and I always think about that every single day.
Everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, that's a really good question though. I'm glad you asked. Yeah. Any other questions?
뉴스를 취재하다 보면 인터뷰가 필수적이거든요. 그런데 방금 이제 선생님이었던 것 중에 공항 산사도 있었고 이태원 산사 같은 것도 있었는데 그렇게 관계된 분들을 인터뷰를 할 때 아무래도 뭐 유족분들이나 그런 분들은 감정적으로 되게 부담이 되어 있는 상태이잖아요. 그런데 그것을 어떻게 좀 신뢰가 되지 않고 인터뷰를 요청할 수 있을지 기자님들께서 따로 마련해주신 일종의 사진 같은 질문할 때 뭐 글 같은 데 있는지 궁금해요.
Do you want to? No, you two go first.
Guidelines. I don't really have. Did you hear all the question? I mean, she was speaking kind of softly. Okay. I'm hearing something. I don't think I have a guideline, but I try to think. I mean, it's impossible, but I try to think in their shoes. This is what I applied when I'm interviewing North Korean defectors, for example. A lot of defectors escape from their country. When they arrive, they have families living in North Korea, and when you're asking them to give us their stories and they don't realize, even if you give them the warning, okay, what you say can be reported, so please don't say anything that could cause any safety alert to your family members living in Pyongyang or North Korea. They often forget, or I don't know, I sometimes say some sensitive things. And I think for them, and I check, and sometimes there was a time that I suggested them not showing the face or not telling where they are from, things like that, try to protect them. So because I think the most important thing is their life and their family's lives than the story. I mean, story is important, but what is more important than people's lives? Nothing, I think. So the reason we're reporting this is to deliver their stories and to help humanity and people, like for this case, North Korean defectors. But going back to your question about disaster zones, it is very, very difficult to try to talk to, for example, bereaved families or any people who are related to victims. We try to be as respectful as possible. A lot of cases, these families want the truth, and I try to tell them by talking to international media, which is impartial to a little bit removed from the local media, or no, actually going back. Try talking to international media could be helpful for the story or truth to be revealed. Some way we can put some pressure on the authorities or investigating the case, and then in that way can help these family members. And that's how I usually try to talk to them. And if they say no, I don't want to talk, then I just don't push. I just move back. And for these cases, I don't think it's that crucial to show somebody wailing and crying and try to kind of erase this emotional sensationalism in journalism. That's my personal take, but maybe somebody else's.
Yeah, I agree with Yoon Jung. It's very important that we empathize with our interviewees, the people that we're talking to in terms of these disastrous sites. I mean, when I was, obviously that was my first experience coming out of the pandemic. I started my job during pandemic, so most of the time I was just working from home, and then that was a big breaking news, tragedy, disaster, bodies around. We spent about 4 days on the site reporting, doing lives. I was with another correspondent at the time, making packages. We just stayed there because bereaved families, the friends who are still visiting that site, laying flowers, people, just anyone who were coming there, and we wanted to talk to these people. And it was obviously my job as a Korean speaker to ask if they want to talk to us. And it was very, very difficult. I still remember this one night we were right outside the station gate exit, waiting for our next live hit, and there was a man on his knee crying. His friend told us that his sister had died from that tragedy, and obviously it's visually very appealing. It's a man crying, he lost his sister. It would be great if we couldn't talk to him, anything that he wants to share about his sister. But I just could not approach him, to be honest. I said, okay, this is where I have to decide. Am I a journalist chasing after stories, which is also very important, but I'm also a person and I don't want to disturb that man's sorrow, crying for his sister. I just sat there with him, just next to him, not right next to him, but I just sat there with him as he cried. I mean, I was also in tears. I'm a person. I was also in tears, and then when he, after like 10-15 minutes, when he finally calmed down, I think I just very slowly asked him if he would like to talk to us about his expressions, he was feeling, and he said no. He was very polite, thankfully. He said no, and I took that as okay, like I should not be pushing him at all. Like that's not something anyone should be doing. We should not be chasing after tragedy. We should not be working based on someone's sadness. I don't think that's what we should be doing. We can still tell the story without talking to him. So when he said no, I said, well, thank you for letting me know, and then I just left the site. And then later, his friend came back to me, like hours later, said, well, he said he's sorry for turning down the interview, which was surprising, because at the same time, I was feeling bad that I had to ask that question to someone who's going through such pain. But I think it's very important that you prioritize their feelings, what these people are going through. Stories do matter, but they can wait. Stories can wait, I think, that time. I mean, sometimes people on the desk might be telling me, no, you still need to talk to them. But I think it's really up to you. You don't want to, I mean, if it's your value, I think, just to empathize with the people, you can still tell the story. You don't always have to stop them from feeling their sadness, which I think is very important. Just approaching them in a humane way is very important, I think.
Never ask, hey, can I talk to you first? Never. And the only thing I would add is maybe have a business card, and after, I tend to ask, can we do anything to help you? Like, we're CNN, we are here, do you need to know anything? Is there anything we can do to help you? That should always be one of your, if not the first, like your first line. And then if it's clear the person doesn't want to talk to you, just say, well, my name is Mike, and here's my card. If you need anything, just text me immediately. That's perhaps a good way to just stay in touch with somebody, but 100% agree with everything said. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, how about let's go over here, and then.
So I am Lisa, the editor-in-chief for the Chungang Herald, the English press for our university. First of all, I had a very lovely time listening to all the stories. I was very inspired, thank you. So as a journalist with global audiences in Korea, I feel that the cultural context is extremely important to understand the news, especially due to our specific historical backgrounds and unique political scenes. I feel that it will be quite difficult to deliver this to the global audiences. How do you manage to deliver the messages to be easily understood by people?
Oh God, who wants to answer
Like talking to your friend in LA.
Yeah. I think you have to, I apologize if this is somewhat repetitive, but you just have to think that you're on the phone with your mom on the phone with your dad, on the phone with your brother, talking into that box, talking to no one, but just trying to explain, this is what I know. You just explain what you know, how you understand it. And since I'm new to Korea, I check with the two other fellow musketeers, the two amigos.
And we check with experts.
Yes, and
they're
experts.
generalists,
Like, do I have my finger right on this? Am I understanding that this explosion in North Korea actually is not a big deal? That things have been worse in North Korea before, blah, blah, blah. So I think that you explain what you know, you check with friends who are around you, authoritative sources, and you just try to pretend like you're seeing a friend who you have not seen in a long time and saying, this is where Korea is coming from, this is what I understand is happening right now, and this is what these are the questions that I still have. And I think that when you follow that beginning, middle, end model, that usually works. That usually works. But you can be, if God forbid, a presenter or an anchor somewhere is asking you a question you don't know the answer to about the setting you're in, you could say, well, that is a very interesting question, and I am going to ask so-and-so that question in the next hour, but this is what I know so far about that topic that you're asking. So it is quite delicate. I think that one of the things that CNN appreciates is that you have to, in your role as being an ambassador, spend time going to different parts of Korea outside Seoul, having a diverse friend group, and just drawing on your lived experiences, drawing on your own observations to inform your reporting. So I hope that somewhat answers your question. Do you have any other thoughts on how we...
I mean, like the topics that, over the course of the years, and the topics that are interesting international audience have changed. I think they have expanded a lot, because years ago it used to be North Korea, Samsung, and those things, but now the international audience has insatiable appetite for everything about Korea. So that makes our job busier, but also that's good, because as a Korean, that means the whole world is more interested in different aspects of Korea. So not only doing North Korean stories, we have to touch on social aspects, a K-pop world, K-drama, and political situation as well. So in order to understand all these things, we need to talk to experts again, as I say, but also expanding kind of the boundary of interest to our global audience is also very important, I think. And by delivering different kind of stories with different topics, and we can make them interested in Korea too, not just focus on the topics that they are familiar with. So we kind of try to balance these different topics, as well as feeding the ones they know, but also adding a little bit more newer and different stories so that they can expand their understanding of Korea as well.
Yeah, I think it's also important to stay away from cliches, to stay away from platitudes, and to just take your time explaining cultural situations. Don't write just one sentence. Don't explain it really quickly, which is our advice from the first question. Just take as much time as you possibly can to not make it a simple answer, but to really try to paint as detailed a picture as we possibly can to explain a cultural story or to explain a political development. I think, yeah, that's what I think of most when confronted with such a situation. Do you have any follow-up questions? I mean, that was a great question. Does that somewhat answer what you were asking?
Yeah.
Okay, thank God. Okay, good. You had a question over here, yeah.
저는 지금 대학 방송국에서 일하고 있는 미국 집안이라고 하고 먼저 오늘 이 대답을 듣게 돼서 만나뵙게 돼서 감사하고 그리고 저희가 그 실제로 12월 달에 그 여의도 중계를 나갔었거든요. 그냥 방송국 그 기자로서 나갔었는데 그 당시에 이제 현장에 나가서 일단 보이는 것만 최대한 담으려고 노력을 했었던 기억이 있고 뭔가 정치적으로 풀어내기보다는 있는 상황을 최대한 담아야겠다고 생각을 했었는데 뭔가 그 이번에 3월에는 이 시위가 상상 집회도 있었고 반대 집회도 있었잖아요. 이렇게 약간 견해가 갈리는 상황에서는 기자로서 어떤 식으로 이런 상황을 담아내야 되는지가 조금 의문이 들었었고 첫 번째 질문은 그거였고요. 그리고 두 번째 질문은 제가 말을 진짜 못하는데 아까 그 라이브 하시는 뉴스를 보니까 2, 3분 동안 계속 말씀하시더라고요. 그래서 급박한 상황 속에서 어떻게 말을 정리해서 잘 말씀하시는지 약간 팁 같은 질문을
Oh boy, those are two interesting questions. Do you want to tackle how we're going to cover Friday, the political? I mean, I'll start. I think the most important thing is
I
to.
think we take the same approach as what, sorry, I forgot your name, you do. We try to deliver what we see.
Yeah.
And what's happening.
And taking time to explain where the pro-union side is coming from, why they have the Stop the Steal signs, why they believe what they believe, and then talk about the history of South Korea with martial law, going back to the Korean War, the 1980s, how instituting martial law is such a shock. I don't think that international audiences at first understood that. So you have to take time to explain where each side started, how they got to where they are, and then the historical context.
Yeah, I mean, we were, in March and all through since December, because this is such a big international news, we were also covering not so much as local media, of course, because so many different things were happening in the States as well. We went out to cover protests, both sides as well. And when we report, we also report about credible poll numbers as well. We also go out and talk to pro-union supporters, and we listen to them, and we recorded their interviews, but as well as anti-Yoon people. And right after martial law, we also had an interview with the prominent lawmaker and chairman of the opposition leader, Lee Jae-myung. So he talked about how he felt on the night of martial law. But at the same time, we interviewed Han Dong-un. At the same, on the night of martial law, he rounded up other supporters and he played a role to pass the impeachment motion. So we tried to be as fair as possible and try to deliver both sides, because I think it's important for the global audience to have the both sides. We try not to make judgments, as I said, but by giving the general public what the general public is inclining to by reporting the poll figures, I think the audience and our readers can maybe understand and grasp what's going on in the country.
No, literally what this two said, I think talking to both sides, what we touched on earlier as well, talking to both sides, making sure talking to both sides, you're balanced. You're not just showing one side or making your own conclusion. Let the viewers, let the readers think for themselves after watching your video or reading your article.
In terms of talking for minutes and minutes and minutes, first of all, it's hard. So don't be freaked out like, oh my God, I'm graduating. What am I gonna do? I can't do it. It's really hard, so it's okay. But I think a specific point of advice, I like to think in terms of threes. We talked about beginning, middle, end. People remember things in groups of threes. So if there's a really overwhelming situation, like the plane crash, first of all, nobody goes on TV like, I'm just going to be ready. We all prepare. We all kind of like jot down thoughts, but I usually like to think of what are the three biggest things that I think are really important. So what were the three biggest things for Mulan? I think that some of the three biggest things were like soldiers are helping out. A bird strike is a new theory, and like the airport is reopening on such and such day. Or just think of three big things that you want to talk about. And at first, after university, you'll be bad, and you will watch your stories from 10 or 14 years ago, like I did the other day when I started, and it takes time. It's a lot of practice, but I know it's probably cliche when the professors say, just keep doing it, then you'll be fine. But it is so true. You just keep doing it. But I think that when you prepare 3 talking points and remember how you want to end. So our ending is usually, what is the open question? What is the lingering question? So when you remember how you want to end your 2-minute, 3-minute conversation, that will help you form a road, a path to how you get there. But don't be freaked out. It's really hard. And sometimes you'll just say, and back to you, because you're done. And that's it. Okay, back to you, Rosemary. Back when you feel like you're done and you have nothing else to say, if you feel like you're really in trouble, just say, and that's all for now. Anderson, that's all for now. Jake, that's it. So I hope that helps. Yeah. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much for the precious stories. I'm coming from, I was a reporter until last year in the CAU English magazine. And since I'm in my last year of college now, I have a lot of thoughts on my career. And even if I am really interested in journalism, my major isn't related to journalism, and I feel like right now I'm very far away from actually being a journalist. So I wanted to ask if you guys feel like there is a need to kind of study academically for journalism, or if there's any other way, or maybe another route to becoming a journalist. Is there a way that you would maybe recommend? Or maybe I also want to hear about more specific stories of how you guys became a journalist, more in the career side, because I was very happy to listen to the motivations of why you became a journalist. But now I have lots of ideas on how I should become a journalist.
There's no specific route to ending up at CNN or ending up at a legacy newspaper or online. I think that's a good thing, but I do remember in university being freaked out, am I doing the right thing? Is my degree good enough? Did you feel that way?
I was freaked out. I graduated 2019 in the States, went to college for 4 years. As I said earlier, I only chose journalism when I applied for school, and then really not knowing what journalism was, to be honest. I just wanted to talk about sports, whether on camera. First I wanted to be on camera and just talk about sports on and on and on. I didn't even know what channel I wanted to go. Later, I loved Tottenham, so for a long time, so I wanted to work for Spurs. And then, my last year, I started freaking out, thinking maybe that's not really ideal, and also not really realistic for me to go all the way to UK and work for Spurs TV. And that's when I started freaking out, I guess. And then that's when I started saying maybe I should explore more. Because for 4 years while I was in college, I was so focused on working in sports media. So as I said earlier, all my internships, my freelance experiences had to do with sports. But I did have variety within the field of journalism. It's not just about writing articles or doing TV packages, I think. As for me personally, I wanted to do on TV broadcasting, which involved writing, shooting. I learned how to edit videos so I can make packages like that. The Kimyeji package I actually edited myself. So that was also part of journalism that I wanted to do. And on the broader side, you could work in, for example, like a control room. I used to, this is so funny, but I used to run the huge television screen at our school's basketball court because I wanted to learn how the system works. Yeah. And our school had some connection with ESPN, which is a large sports broadcasting channel in the US. So I learned how ESPN and college TV station all work together, just learning the tech side of it. There's so much in journalism that you can explore. I mean, you're still young. Just go out and experience it, really. I know, I sound like Gonde. But I really think, I mean, I studied journalism, but I think journalism is all about going out and doing it yourself than sitting in a lecture class and being lectured through a PowerPoint. Even at journalism, when I was studying journalism in college, a lot of our professors gave us assignments to go out and talk to people, interview people. And I still am, but I'm a huge introvert. So that for me was a challenge, and I learned that through the journalism class, but you can still do that even when you're not studying journalism at school. But I think it's really important you go out and try things yourself than sitting in a classroom. And professors will be saying yeah,
And it's really difficult. Yeah. I mean, practical thing, like when I was in 20s was the worst time. I look back because there was uncertainty. And then everybody you know is telling you, you can do anything. And then I was thinking, what do you mean? You need to have a career to move on to a different career. Where do I start? I need to start. And the advice I usually give to some of the students we meet or interns and other people is you need to have thick skin first. And like practical advice for people who want to work in international journalism, international media. I don't really know much about local media. I think local media has like a yearly entrance exam kind of thing. For international media, they have different kind of types of hiring position. So practical information is honestly this is my honest practical information, which is go for wire services where look for the media outlets with more positions first. And then you can email those people. And I got my interview with, like, for example, Reuters when I emailed the person actually, like, this is what I want to do, this is what I did, and I think I can be good, and then like, give me a chance to have an interview with you. And then I got an interview, and I did make it, but this is, you know, for you to be able to go to the interview itself, I think it can be a good experience. I mean, I think it's the same thing for local media as well. Nowadays, like, there is kind of a blurry boundary between legacy media and other, alternative media journalism. So I think getting more experience in the field is really important. I was getting those field experiences by freelancing. And you can get a lot of experience with like both local media, different, for example, YouTube channels or other things, or social media, and then try going on to legacy media or TV or terrestrial channels. And I think these people will value your experience a lot more than try to get so-and-so legitimate job right after graduating from college, because no matter how you think you got a lot of experience while studying in college, real life experience is a little bit different than experience you get in college. That's my practical advice, very honest.
I think that's so important. Like freelancing, people might not take that as an option because it's unstable. You don't know what you would be doing like 3 months after. But it's a true value. You can spend 3 months learning with the veterans, working alongside them, learning, and you're not an intern, which means you get to do more jobs, more work. That gives you more experience, and that way you can learn more and you can add more on your resume. So I think I also did freelancing right after graduating as an option. Also wanted to experience various sides of journalism that I mentioned earlier. So I think, yeah, freelancing is something you can definitely consider for jumping into your job, I guess.
And you all are doing amazingly. You all can speak English and Korean, the two hardest languages in the world to learn. So you all have that, which is terrific. So if you bring that to any news organization, they'll be like, oh, wow, okay, you're far different from most other applicants who we are looking at. And I started really small. I graduated university like a big moron. I thought, oh, I'm good enough for New York. I'm good enough for Los Angeles. And I started at one of the smallest TV stations. I think I was rejected at like 60 TV stations. And you start really small. I went from North Carolina to Virginia to Washington, D.C. to CNN. And it was great. So I think starting small, you know, if you don't start in Seoul, who cares? It's fine. It's great. Make your mistakes in your really small newsroom, and you do everything, and you make friends, and you have hilarious misadventures. Yeah. And
speaking Korean is a high plus.
High demand.
International,
high demand.
Especially because you can also understand North Korean. Maybe not fully, but you can still understand.
In accents,
a lot of people
yeah.
don't, so that's a big plus. Yeah. Just wanted to add on that.
Yeah, so we like to bring up the refrain of we're freaked out. I'm sure that everybody here is freaked out, but you all are incredible. Like, you are doing such a terrific job. So maybe just be like a little less freaked out. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah, just enjoy it.
Yeah, I know that's easy for us to say. Yeah, but it truly will be okay. Yeah. Any other? Was that good enough advice? Okay. Yeah. There's no one path. That's kind of the scariest thing. Like, am I doing this right? Who knows? Any other questions? Oh, yeah. Okay.
안녕하세요. 중앙대학교 방송국에서 PD로 일하고 있는 이소연이라고 합니다. 저는 그 뉴스 같은데 단순히 말하는 거나 텍스트뿐만 아니라 카메라의 구도나 샷으로도 설명될 수 있다고 생각하는데요. 그런 의미에서 그 김예리 선수 인터뷰했을 때 김예리 선수가 총을 쏘는 그 장면을 담은 샷이 굉장히 강렬하게 다가왔어요. 그래서 어떤 사안을 전개할 때 샷의 구도를 어떻게 정하시는지 기준이나.
How do you choose our shots?
No, we should have brought Charlie.
But Charlie's our cover. But just as since I produced that package, I couldn't join the trip because I had to go on a training to Thailand. But
survival training.
Yes, survival training.
Yeah.
So I had to make a list for Charlie, who was going there to shoot. So when I'm producing a package, I envision how it will look like. So you think of a headline, and for each shot, like that was the shot I wanted to start with. So I specifically asked Charlie, can I get a shot of her pointing the gun at your camera? And he did a great job of controlling the focus. He did like 3-5 shots of it, and I chose the best out of it. And it's very powerful, and I appreciate you for saying that. And also acknowledging that. I think
discussion process,
Forget everything you heard.
Anyway.
Great. Have the very last question.
Great planning, yeah, great planning.
Yeah, I think when you think about how you want to tell the story ahead of time for packages like that, you can also think about how you want your viewers to view it, because it needs to be interesting for it to grasp their attention. These times, we're all into just scrolling, and reels are only 60 seconds long, so if you don't get their attention within a few seconds, they'll just scroll over. Same for TV, they're not going to watch it. So you want the most interesting, powerful shot at the beginning, also, I guess, for the script as well. But yeah, we need Charlie for this question, but that was my thought process when I was asking Charlie to shoot stuff.
And Charlie shoots a lot.
Yes.
We spent
He also
hours.
shoots a lot. I think it's better to have more than less always.
Yeah, when you're in doubt, try all different angles. And also there'll be people tapping your back and say like, look this way, look that way, how about this one, how about that one? And might as well just shoot while you're at the scene, because you never know what kind of a shot you will need when you're editing.
No, I was just going to say, what they teach you in journalism school is always true in the sense that your most compelling video always goes first. Maybe one exception if you want to build a story like a crescendo, like you're leading to a mystery reveal, but it's most of the time your most compelling image goes first because of the scroll effect. And we thought that was the most compelling image. And when you look at the reel and the TikTok, that shot is also the first one. Yeah.
Yeah, if you ever have time, just look up our social media. We have a TikTok, Instagram video of Kim Ye-ji from a style point of view. Very well edited. So, and a CNN.com article.
But the stories always come out so much better when you do have the planning. Because if you're doing a story so fast, with one day instead of 1 week, then
you forget.
Yeah. So that's good. Good level of planning.
I think that was the last question as far as I know.
Those were excellent questions. We hope that we did justice to your questions. Yeah. Anybody else? No? Good.
Wait, 100 minutes.
Oh,
the very
last.
No pressure.
저도 이제 정규직에서 부부부 기자로 활동을 하고 있고요. 저는 뭔가 좀 크게 질문을 드리고 싶은데 어쨌든 이제 미국의 언론사에서 한국에 오셔서 이제 많은 걸 보도를 하시는데 저는 그냥 궁금했던 게 그럼 미국과 한국의 언론을 대하는 방식이 어떤 차이가 있었나 느끼신 점이 정말 궁금했어요. 그래서 시민들이 그 보도를 보고 느끼는 거나 아니면 언론에서 시민한테 전달하는 방식이라던가 그냥 그런 거에서 어떤 차이점을 느끼셨군요. 그래서
That's a great question. I'm not sure if I can answer that on the spot. Do you have any thoughts before I jump in?
결론적으로는 그 양국가의 언론이 어떤 식으로 발전해야 될까라는 그런 질문을
How are the two countries different?
That's the question too.
That would be
What? Back to you, Rosemary.
No, I think that there are honestly more similarities as to how
they're getting closer and closer.
I think
the world is getting smaller and smaller.
I think that there are more similarities based on what we watch on NBC, YTN, PBS, and what we put forward. I will say this is perhaps a different way of answering your question. CNN hired me to have my own perspective. They wanted somebody who had a fresh perspective on things happening in South Korea, on things happening in East Asia. So you you don't feel as though you have to change your perspective. You just have to be open and empathetic and willing to learn where people are coming from, understanding how the different political parties in South Korea are operating. And I think that CNN and the New York Times and our colleagues hire people because they may have points of view, but they're really good at explaining people's motivations and people's storytelling. And I think I see that in South Korean media, American media as well. I think the only difference that comes to mind immediately is the blurring of people's images in public video from South Korean media compared to American owned and operated channels. I thought that was somewhat interesting. When I first saw people blurred on South Korean TV, I said, what? They're on the street. Like, they are. They're in public. They should be, like, whatever. Not whatever, but...
But later learned that we have a stronger defamation law in South Korea and
portrait rights.
Yeah, portrait rights.
Right. Do you want to speak on that at all?
Well, I just explained that you all know, and then I think, but in South Korea it has become more intense over the course of years, and we see a lot more blurred faces. And I don't know. I don't work in local media, so to be honest, I don't really know. But as Mike said, that I think two sides of the world, South Korea and America, I think they are learning and being affected by each other some way. South Korea, as you know, had a broadband with it. Well, it has the fastest internet access, so it has helped building like media environment in like TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, and YouTube channels, and having different kind of platforms. Consuming and creating the same news different ways to different audiences. I think America, they invented Instagram and many other different platforms, but I think the way to use it, and I think the two countries are being affected by each other and for the infrastructure, and also by the way people are approaching and consuming news. So same answer.
There are things every now and then that surprise me. Treatment of celebrities in South Korea, and sort of like the press conference that was given 2 days ago, like the need to address a controversy like that. I thought that was something that might not happen in the United States. So I think that they're getting more similar, but every now and then there might be something that, as an American born in Washington, D.C., I might say, do you have any thoughts on how we're separate?
Is that your question?
It's a broad question. It's not trying to work out any thoughts on that.
No, I mean, I think it's really interesting. We have these conversations in our office because we have like Mike and our other reporter, Brad Lenton. They're both from America. Charlie from Scotland. Eugene and I are from Korea. We all have different growing backgrounds. So when we gather and start talking, everyone has different perspectives, and we're all like, oh my god, this is new. I didn't know about this side about Korea that Mike and Brad finds interesting, or they're like, oh, what is this? And I'm like, oh, it's just a Korean thing. Like we all, it's just a silent rule. Like blurring people, I never really questioned until someone pointed out, like, why is South Korea blurring people? I'm like, well, portrait rights. Yeah. So you think about the differences, and you also think again about your own culture, and I think that's very important. Also, when you gather, just have a lot of conversations, and then you'll find, very interesting points that you probably didn't think about in your daily lives.
I think that maybe perhaps a final note is that it's encouraging to see media in both South Korea and the United States extremely tenacious at searching for the truth. Politics is very, there are so many fissures, especially now, but the tenacity of news organizations in Seoul, DC, New York, Atlanta, I think is really heartening in terms of not backing down, not just taking a party line, being inquisitive, and that shows no signs of abating. I think that's how they're quite similar, and that's always very encouraging to see. Yeah. Excellent question. Well, thank you all. This has been amazing. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate it. And please reach out if you need anything in the future. We're here to help. We're up the street. Yeah, yeah. So come work for us eventually. Down the road. We appreciate it. But thank you, everybody. This was great. Thank you.
Thank you.